Hey everyone. If you're like me, you're probably playing a ton of Season 2 of Marathon and checking out the new sponsored survival mode on Dire Marsh. If you look anywhere on social media, people are saying it's the easiest way to gear up this season, and they're not wrong. Right now, it's basically free real estate, and I'm not really sure how I feel about that. While I think this mode is a good start, I think there's a lot of things Bungie could do to make it better. So today, I wanted to throw out some ideas that I've been rattling around in my head about how to improve sponsored survival. Before we get into it though, if you enjoy my content, please consider leaving a like. It really helps out the channel. And if you want to hear some more from me, consider subscribing. All right, shilling over. So for those who don't know, Sponsored Survival is a new mode added in Marathon Season 2. The premise is simple. You and your squad spawn in as the only runners on the map. You can do everything you normally do. Complete contracts, kill bots, and get loot. But after a set amount of time, rooks will start to spawn in. The match is 20 minutes long and the only exfil spawns right at the end. The catch is that everyone shares the same extract. So either you befriend the rooks and let them exfil with you or you kill them on sight. It's pretty straightforward. Let's start with the good. Overall, this is a great addition to the game. It lets players who aren't as great at PvP gear up with the potential for golds in the upper complex rooms, and it serves as a softer introduction for new players, letting them learn the map without the constant pressure of PvP. Balance-wise, the map is also in a good spot for runners. It's not impossible to solo upper complex, but it's still a challenge, and that challenge gets much easier with a full coordinated squad. Likewise, the world bosses feel good to fight as a squad and are totally doable, albeit with a bit more of a challenge as a solo player. I've seen a lot of salty players out there in the community saying it's too easy to get gear and that it's going to ruin the game's economy. Honestly, I think that's a bit of an overreaction. The way I see it, the sweaty squads that you run into who are gooped up with golds and thermal scopes are always going to be there, regardless of this game mode. There's always going to be someone out there with more time and fewer responsibilities than you, and they're going to farm up good gear. That's just how these games work, and it's really how a lot of extraction shooters function. Sure, now they can take a somewhat easier route in sponsored survival, but so can you. Now, you might actually have a fighting chance. Plus, in my experience over these past few days, the pinwheel is still a better spot to loot for the time it takes to get in there. To their credit, Bungie picked the right map to do this on, and the fact that it's only going to be around for the free week also makes that less of an issue. And one last thing on the item economy. Marathon has a built-in system that automatically destroys items after they've been looted. I think it's 5 times in-game. Every weapon has a shelf life. You can't just repair it like you can in Arc Raiders, so if you see people yelling about the economy, I think you can safely ignore them because this system basically prevents you from flooding the economy with crazy good weapons. Now, to be fair, I don't think the trace system applies to shields or backpacks. I've never actually looked, but if it does, great. If not, I think those aren't as important as the weapons, but regardless, I think there are things that Bungie could do to fix the economy if this did throw it out of whack, so I'm not too worried about it. All right, this is all great, but what could be improved? Well, for starters, I don't think there's enough PvP in my PvE mode. Wait, no, don't click off the video yet. Let me explain. See, on paper, the mode sounds balanced. Sure, it's just your squad, but there's a chance you'll run into a rook and you all share one exfil. That should make it unpredictable and force you to PvP, right? Well, in practice, that's not really the case. The first problem is there's no incentive to play as rook over just solo queuing into sponsored survival yourself. The rounds are so short that there isn't enough time to coordinate with the other rooks to jump the enemy team at exfil, and even if you can jump the runners, you'll barely have any time to grab the loot they drop and get out. Combine that with the fact that spawning in 5 minutes late leaves you almost no time to loot. Let's say you do manage to get something good. Well, too bad, you're going to be facing 3 potentially extremely geared up runners who do not want you using their exfil. And look, I'm guilty of it too. There were so many times a rook tried to engage us at exfil and we just turned on them, either burning them down immediately or scaring them away. I can't imagine that's very fun for them. This is where the problem gets a lot worse. If there's no incentive to play as rook, then no rooks will queue in. If no rooks queue in, there's no potential for PvP at the end, and soon enough, runners won't have any fear when they're extracting in this mode. So how do you fix this? Well, maybe you could spawn in one other full squad. That would surely ratchet up the tension, but then how is that any different from a regular Marsh game? The end of the match would essentially just be a coin toss of 2 teams forced to fight each other. You could also just have no rooks, but then you're just left with the same tensionless situation. I think rooks need to be included for this game mode to work, but how does Bungie incentivize people to play as them? For starters, I think rooks should spawn with at least a blue shield a blue or purple weapon, blue heals, and maybe even a blue or purple backpack. This would make it easier for them to kill and loot, collect certs or complete side objectives, and it would make them much scarier right off the bat to fight at the end of the round. To sweeten the deal, I'd also crank up the spawns for matter fixatives. This is an item that lets you take out compromised gear that rooks usually spawn with, so then that purple backpack you spawned him with, that's yours. Now a player spawning as Rook has a great starting kit they can actually use to fight a full squad, plus the potential to get good loot without having to do a ton of heavy lifting. Right now the game is forcing Rooks into sponsored survival, but once that forced event is gone, and we don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I assume they're going to let Rooks spawn on other maps in the future. Once that's gone, I just don't see why the average Rook would choose to spawn into a map with sponsored survival unless they have a really good incentive like I just mentioned. As long as Bungie can get the Rooks into matches, runners will constantly be looking over their shoulders when they exfil, keeping the core of what makes Marathon feel like Marathon without being full-on PvP. I also think it would be a good idea for Bungie to add Rook-only exfils to sponsored survival, with a few caveats. These extracts would need to be silent. Basically, you just run up, you hit a button, and then you leave. This would stop runners from actively hunting down the Rooks, and it would keep the actual number of Rooks in the match a mystery. I'd lean towards making these exfils spawn late, but still earlier than the final extract, forcing Rooks to stay on the map longer. Also, the extract should be locked behind some sort of resource mechanic. On Night March, maybe it costs like 30 certs or something like that. You could also restrict it so you can't exfil with a backpack or put some other kind of restriction on it. Honestly though, just locking it behind a resource could be enough. In this hypothetical version, a Rook might spawn in, farm up certs, loot a bit, and then decide to dip out early. But because runners don't know that, the tension remains. Another aspect that I think could be interesting is letting Rooks see either the position of other Rooks or how many are left in the match. I'll admit that might be a step too far, but it could be funny in that, Rooks would be more easily able to gang up on the team of runners. Alternatively, you could make it so Rooks can see the locations of the final extract while runners can't. That way, a Rook could stake out the exfil, lay down some claymores, or get into a good sniping spot. This would be my top pick if they don't want to make Rook-only exfils an option. Here's my most wild and out there idea. What if, instead of the runners spawning first, the Rooks get to spawn in first? That way, Rooks get about 5 minutes to themselves before the runners show up. I'll admit, it's probably the worst idea out of the bunch, but hey, it might give people more of an incentive to play Rook. All I'm trying to say is, I think that sponsored survival is a great addition to the game. It's an awesome start, but in its current state, a few things are holding it back from being truly incredible. Look, I'm not a game designer, but I don't think it would be that hard for Bungie to tweak the mode to elevate it a bit. That's enough rambling from me, though. Let me know what you think in the comments. Am I way off base here? Do you want to see something different done with sponsored survival? Do you hate it? Do you think it's the worst thing ever? Tell me in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, everybody.